All right. Hey, I just want to start off with a big thank you to our own Austin Bean for the fabulous visuals on the screen today. That's top-notch work. That's the best stuff I've seen out of you.
That's the best material. Last week we had flying bats. This is like unbelievable.
Yeah. So happy Day of the Dead. Happy Day of the Dead to all. All right, let's get started. Let's get going. All right. Hey, Tuesday today, 1:30 here at Bridgeport in the front room. I believe it's in the front room.
Yep.
We are continuing the MREA book club. It's led by you all agents, and it's fantastic. And I'm not sure what topic, what they're on to today, but I think you can stop in, regardless if you haven't read the book, regardless if you're not read up to the chapter, regardless if you even open the book, stop in and take a look and a listen and get involved in a great discussion. I've read part of this book. I've been reading this book. It's fantastic. We're book clubbing it in the office as well. With the leadership staff. There's so much good information in there. It's eye-opening stuff. If you haven't read it and you have time today at 1:30, come in and join the discussion. It's gonna be fantastic.
Yeah, and we'll have extra books there. So
yes,
it's not just as Kelly said, it's easy to walk in and listen to what's being discussed.
Yep.
I've read this book a couple of times, and I do scan through it to pick up some of the tidbits that he's got in some of the areas. And so this is really the Bible of real estate, and the leadership has been doing this for what, 3 months?
Yeah, 3 months.
3 months. Each week on Fridays, we go through a section or whatever of the book. So,
I mean, if you're a student of real estate, and even if you've been in another company, it's likely you've already read this book. I mean, it's like, that's how much gravity this book has. It's not just a Keller Williams book. It applies to real estate for everybody in general. All right, next. Ignite, Alex Clark, session 17, making and receiving offers, and session 18, negotiating offers. And Alex is fantastic at this. This is going to be great. Again, this is a new version of Ignite. So if you've been through part of this before and think that you know all this information, you probably don't. This is new information. And Alex always brings great, interesting tidbits and insight into the topic.
Yeah, and if you don't know, the Clark Group is selling over 100 homes. How many homes did you sell last year, Peter? 21.
Whole year, I think 96.
96, and this year
68 or something like
68, so 96, 150, and then you did what, 135 the year before?
that. I think so, yeah.
So maybe like 300 deals in 3 years.
Oh, yeah, and Tanya left.
Well, yeah, you don't have Tanya now, so you're doing less, but we have her and we're doing less. So how does that work?
What?
We're doing so.
Yeah,
Hey, she's the #1 coach in the region.
I agree.
Yeah, KWP.
In the region's fair, maybe in the country. She's certainly in the conversation. Anyways, Clark Group knows what they're doing, so come listen to them talk.
Yeah,
We'll tell you that Alex negotiates all of it.
and Alex is the negotiator. Oh my gosh, that's
Mhm.
even better.
Mhm. He's a closer.
Master negotiator.
Oh, perfect.
Cool.
And the next one.
The next one is the best one.
Oh, this would be good.
Wow, this
Wow.
is saving the best till last.
I mean, come for the eye candy and stay for the information, right?
That's
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have the lights down low.
Should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to doing it. I'm going to learn a little something from Dwight, and he's probably going to get dumber from listening to me, but we'll see how it goes.
No way, no way. I tell people in the region, you are the best managing broker I've ever seen in real
That's
estate.
very, very humbling. Thank you, David.
And
All
it's
right.
true.
Well, come. This is on Thursday, 9 to 11. Go ahead, Austin. We can get something to say.
Yeah, no.
All right.
So command training. So this tomorrow, Wednesday, we're going to go over opportunity checklists. A lot of people know how to do the opportunities because that's how you get paid, but there is that special little feature in opportunities to create checklists to set up your home, like your buyers and your sellers through this, through the long roadmap that you have with them. Get these checklists set up so you don't miss a beat with any of them, especially when you have multiple transactions going on at once. So we have a resource for that to be able to create those checklists, and we'll pretty much just do it together and get that thing started. Because yeah, it takes a little bit of time to get that started, but once it's set up, you can set up reminders and even notify and update your clients once you click a checkbox and say that you're done with something to add that transparency to the transaction. So it's really cool. And we'll go over that tomorrow.
And you can set command up to alert you, can't you?
Yeah. So you can set up like due dates and stuff on those. And so with Command Mobile and things like that, you can do
See
that
it
kind
on
of
your
stuff.
phone.
Yep.
Call Jim.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Who would like to do more referral business? Like have more of their clients refer them clients? Right? Well, like we know how this all works because this is what we do every day. We accept an offer, we negotiate repairs, we review the preliminary title report, we check on the lending, yada yada. We all know what this is. We do it in our sleep, but it's a very stressful time for our clients. And so having these little checkpoints to come in and give them updates about where they're at in the transaction is probably the difference between getting referral and not getting a referral. I think. Like if they're wondering what's going on in their deal,
Exactly right.
they're wondering what's going on in the deal and they have to call you, then that's bad.
That's exactly right. It's the
Yeah.
difference between getting a referral and not.
So I would do this.
Yeah, I would say in my experience also, when I was first in the business, flying by the seat of my pants, I didn't use checklists. I just kind of did everything from memory and tried to stay ahead of the people. And then I hired my first assistant and tried to teach her. And then she moved out of Oregon. And when I went to hire my second assistant, it hit me like a ton of bricks that I needed to have a documented checklist for everything, because as I would turn over assistants, you didn't want to recreate this. It was ridiculous. So having a checklist, they're available in Command. They're available.
Like the templates.
People
there's-
post their template.
Yeah. So
In Connect.
But it's great. It's an Oregon, you can tell it's an Oregon real estate agent. But other than that, like there may be obviously some things in this template that aren't applicable to one individual agent, but it's a good like starting point of how to structure it. So
Yeah, and this would be the time of year, we're going into the time of year where I've always done my house cleaning, because as it slowed down, this was how I would clean up my finances. So I didn't have to worry about them next year. I would reorganize my housekeeping and get everything clean. And so I could open up January running at full speed. And so this is the time that you would go in and you'd start setting up these lists so that you don't have to do it. Once you do it, you might have to tweak it a little bit if you decide there's an extra step or one step isn't worth having because it confuses people, but it's something that you would do in the fourth quarter.
Question, have you guys ever written a standard operating procedure for yourself, an SOP for what you do every day? Like it is really eye-opening to like sit down and like try to put to words what you do so that somebody else could follow it. Or as you're building a team for your assistant, day-to-day stuff, your buyer's agent, your listing specialist, whatever it might be, writing an SOP is eye-opening and it can really change your business. And I think as like you're saying, going into the fourth quarter, things are going to slow down a little bit. You're going to have a little extra time and you want to get set up and running for next year. You want to set your goals. You want to see where your weaknesses and your strengths are. It's a good time of year to start this.
And this is going to be a year, I can feel it, where people are going to get started early on next year. So, historically, sometimes I noticed that I didn't get a lot of calls until after the new year. But a few years ago, I started like in 2019, I started getting calls like before Christmas from people, like several noticeable number of people calling saying, we want to meet you after Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's. And I thought, wow, people are getting a jump on the year.
Yeah.
And so this is probably going to be one of those years. It feels like it will be. More and more people are going to realize that real estate is not going up and may actually be going down, and interest rates might be going up. And so there's going to be a lot of motivation. You just need to be fully ready.
Yep. This is such a great opportunity to fill up your tool belt, to tighten up your business and really hit the ground running and have a good 2023 and then really enjoy the increased market share in the following years.
That's right.
Yep. All right. Thank you. Thanks for the idea on get this going, Austin. Okay. Free credit hour class and lunch, appraiser's toolkit, preparing for the appraisal with Catherine Christian, Vice President of Business Development, certified residential appraiser, and quality control reviewer for Appraisal Tech. This is Friday, November 4th. It's a different day than we typically do it, but Friday, November 4th from 12:30 to 1:30 here at the British office, here in this training room. Can't talk. It should be great. Lots of good information there. I love talking to appraisers and getting an insight into what they do. So we can kind of help. I've used it most effectively with seller clients who want to overprice their house, and being able to explain a little bit about the appraisal process to them has been really powerful, because like, look, even if we can find someone silly enough to pay this much for the house, we're not going to be able to find an appraiser that's going to go along with it.
Yeah, and this is going to be more important than ever. Talk about perfect timing. What's going to happen is, as you have fewer showings on your listings, when you do get an offer together, there's such excitement. And if you don't have the home ready for the appraiser, it'll fail.
That's a good point.
And there's an interesting thing that happens. I know our lender friends can talk about this, but when the appraisers do an appraisal, they have to check a box about whether the local market is stable, going up, or trending down. And as soon as they switch to trending down, we will start having appraisal problems in Portland, I guarantee you. So far, like, what are you guys seeing on the appraisals? Are they stable? They're stable. And they were up. Yeah, so now they're stable. So probably first quarter, they're going to start to see some where they're saying trending down. You're not going to be able to get those one-off prices anymore. And so we're going to have to double down on our thoroughness and on the structure, how clean the structure is. You can take care of deferred maintenance. So this is perfect timing to understand those pitfalls.
Yeah. One thing I just thought of this now is to always, and this is silly, I've been doing this for so long, but telling my clients to prepare for the appraiser like a buyer's coming to the house.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
I
what
just
we
never
did.
really considered that.
We got our comps together. We made notes on them. We wrote letters. We had a package. We turned the lights on, turned the heat up.
Leave
Just like
$200
a showing.
underneath the, wait, you can't do that.
No, I would just hand the appraiser my package.
Okay.
Yep. Say, here's some things that might help you with your appraisal.
Yep.
And they'd say, thank you very much. And
Yeah.
they would look at all of them, folks.
Yeah. They
So,
will always take your comps.
That's right.
Altos, why that specific area and price point will sometimes help, because not all markets in every neighborhood are going down together.
Yeah.
That's right. There are micro markets, as Peter said.
This is true.
Things won't change. If we have a declining market where we actually start to see some real softness in the market, it won't happen at every price point in every neighborhood.
And especially if you're selling a house in a nuanced neighborhood, like let's say you're in Murray Hill proper, or Eastmoreland, or Laurelhurst, or someplace that's really kind of has its own definition. And if there's a weird ripple in sale prices, and there's maybe all the 3,000 square foot, 900,000 houses sold, but the 1.1s didn't sell, or I don't know. Anyways, it's good to have all this information prepared and be able to speak to the nuances of the neighborhood and get out in front of it with the appraiser before, but still go to the class. More information.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll turn it again.
Hey.
Gonna be up here a little bit. Okay. Yeah, I'm also talking about KWYP. So this week is the week. Friday and Saturday, we are finally having our chapter launch for Keller Williams Young Professionals for Portland. So this is our lineup. It's kind of hard to see with the lights, but we have a great list of panelists, 6 young professional agents from the Keller Williams offices in Portland who have, I guess, proven themselves. They're very well, what do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for?
Accomplished.
Very accomplished agents. 2 from our office, Bradley King and Kylie Usher with the Fox Group. But then we have a lot of people may know Megan Jamago Simpson and
Alex Fan.
Yeah, Alex Fan. So there's a lot of good agents that are going to be on this panel. And then we have 2 keynote speakers who happen to also be MAPS coaches, which will be Cody Gibson and Aaron Hurd. They're going to be awesome. It's going to be a great event on Friday. And then I think I just got a text like 15 minutes ago for what we're doing Saturday. We've been trying to juggling between a few, but I think we're going down to Pips and Bounce. So it's a ping pong bar. We're gonna have a tournament and stuff like that. So it'll be pretty good to like mingle with people. But if you're interested, there is a QR code that you can scan. It is available to anyone. Anyone can go, regardless of age, and regardless of if they're at KW or not, anybody can go. And there is a $50 admission fee for people who are not members of KWYP. But if you happen to join KWYP, there is a promo code that we'll provide for you for 100% off. So you are welcome to go. And if the slide passes by the time before you consider it, just reach out to me. Let me know.
And it is totally worth hearing those two speakers
Oh, yeah.
alone,
Yeah.
because to hear, we've had Cody as a maps coach. He's a phenomenal maps coach. I think he's the #1 requested maps coach.
Bold
Or
bold
bold
teacher.
Bold coach, excuse me. And then Aaron is a phenomenal maps coach. So like, we wouldn't be able to get them to our market center to speak normally. So
Mhm.
this is a great opportunity to listen to them, and they'll talk about preparing for next year. You can bet on it.
It'll honestly be a mini mega camp of sorts.
Yeah.
So it's
Real
going to be,
people.
it's going to
I'd
be,
pay $50 to hear Bradley and Kylie talk.
yeah.
I would too. Yeah, absolutely.
Very great.
Bradley's doing some serious commercial work right now.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And we all know Kylie.
Yeah,
She's
Kylie,
fantastic.
yeah, she's great.
All right.
I'll hang out here for.
You want to hang out?
Yeah.
Why don't you talk
That'd be-
about this?
Oh yeah. So okay. No, so Andrew Anderson, it's his 3rd time coming back by popular demand. So he is going to do a part 3 on the mindset kind of topic that he's been going on for the last couple months. For those who are familiar and have been to the meetings that we've had with him, he really starts to give a lot more of that introspection, thinking about yourself and what you need to do to kind of shift your mindset to, into 2023 and things like that. So it'll be good. It'll be really good.
Yeah, I thought like the first one, we're all kind of like a little bit back on our heels.
Oh,
because
yeah.
He had such a different approach. We're like, wow, this guy got really personal. with
I
us.
felt defensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
did, right?
Wait a minute, no.
But I think that's by
It is
design, right?
Yeah.
Right. But this last one, man, I was like, we're all used to it. I felt
Yeah.
like, and I just like really felt what he was talking about. And
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear what he has to say next time. So
Yeah. So more info on the topic. I did reach out to him to get more of an idea of what he's gonna be talking about. So we'll get that information and shoot that out later this
he's
week.
probably not going to tell you because he wants you to be able to be
Oh, yeah.
surprised.
Edge on your seat.
Yeah.
By the way, he is available to coach. I mean,
Yeah.
he is a coach. He's a productivity coach, and he is a licensed Keller Williams realtor.
Mhm.
And so he's in Boise. His life is coaching. He's not actively selling. His life is coaching. He also is coming out with a book this month, so it's probably out in the next week or two. And he said it's a bestseller. So I'm not sure how you do that before they come out, but I'm confident that just listening to him, he is going to have a bestseller. So he's definitely worthwhile hearing from.
Absolutely. Yep. He's smart.
Okay. That's
Go
why I
ahead.
stayed up.
That's why you stayed
Okay.
there. Huh?
So Command Con. So our first ever Command Con. It'll be live streamed here at the office next week on Wednesday, the 9th. That's 9th, Wednesday? Yeah. At 8 a.m. So we are accommodating an Eastern time live stream, but we will make up for it with something, I'm sure.
Probably bagels.
Bagels.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Oh,
we'll
then some
probably-
coffee.
have it all.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
exactly.
guessing.
We'll have
Ready.
food. We'll
Yeah.
get something here.
Pretty fantastic.
But it's gonna be really good. I think a lot of agents who either have been with KW for a while or are just starting with KW, there's a lot that Command has to offer, especially in the last year. These features that they've rolled out that a lot of people may not be aware of. And so they're going to go into that. They may even roll out some special announcements. But I think they said that the total lineup of the roster of people who are going to be at this event collectively have had $250 million in volume. And so these are people who are doing tens of millions of dollars in volume through Command. And how are they utilizing the contacts and opportunities and smart plans, like email newsletters, things like that. So they'll go and dive deeper into what features that Command has to just help your business, especially in a time when you're trying to cut back on costs and get rid of any third-party, services that you're paying for. If Command has an option for that, take a look at it. And I think someone had I think it was at the leadership thing last week. It's like, I think the tagline someone used was, "Hey, Command, come to Command Con." It's like, Command may not be for everyone right now because maybe it's something that you just didn't like in the past, but a lot of things have been either fixed, balanced, stabilized, or improved. And so highly recommend going and just checking it out. Worst case is that you may just pick a few things and not everything, and that's fine. Absolutely fine. It'll be good.
Yeah, so for those of you that are newer to the company, Command was rolled out several years ago. Frankly, it didn't work.
I think they beta tested it on the entire company, which is not how you
That's
typically do
exactly.
things.
Well, I don't think
Yeah.
they intended to beta test
Yeah.
it. I think it blew up, and
Yeah.
that's what they started to the discussion around. So it didn't work very well. We had a lot of frustrated people in the office because we were led to believe that it was going to work. So that president that rolled it out was fired, and Gary doubled down and hired a company. He had the system audited by Bain and Associates, if that name rings a bell to anybody. And the Bain said that it's not right. You used the wrong platform. And so Gary has rebuilt it using Bain. And he spent about $500 million right now so far in rebuilding it. And he's getting offers. The functionality is starting to work so well. He's getting offers from venture capital funds that want to just buy it and then make it available to all realtors around the world. And so he doesn't want to do that because it's proprietary just to Keller Williams agents. And so the beauty is it's starting to work at all levels. And so that's why we're having this command con. So all these people can show you how the different functionality works in command. So that's why.
It'll be good. So
Awesome.
next Wednesday,
Cool.
What's the date again?
Wednesday at 8.
the 9th.
8 a.m.
I don't know.
release a live virtual event. I'm guessing it's not gonna be recorded.
Not on our end.
We don't have the
No.
ability to do that, I'm afraid.
Well, they're gonna,
Well, but it's not KW that's putting it on, it's
Yeah.
actually an agent
Mhm.
at KW, put this on, and KW was like, wow.
Promoting it because it's such a great idea.
but they're bringing in a lot of heavy hitters from KW, like Mark King and I think Jason Abrams and things like that.
Chris
So,
Potts, chief
Yeah.
tech officer,
Mhm.
Casey was on the stage at that agent.
All right. All right. Hey, holiday party. You can register now. It's
yeah,
live.
It's live.
It's live?
Guys, it's after Halloween. We are now talking the holidays. And so there
Mm-hmm.
is a QR code. You can RSVP, get that on your calendar. I know people's calendars will fill up with bunch of parties.
With other
and stuff.
parties that probably won't be as good as this.
I'm trying to jump the gun here.
Yep.
Get ahead of it.
Yep. I
So,
want to see you all there. And so last year was a blast. We
Oh,
just
it's
did
so-
in here. We're gonna be at St. Irene's, which is gonna be fantastic. It's just over in Sherwood Walton area. It'll be, bring your dancing shoes, Tanya says.
we'll try to bring the big Santa Claus again. Fix his thumb. It was too wild last year that we broke his hand.
Mhm.
So let's fix that and then
Okay.
we'll bring him.
All right. And healthcare plans are available, open enrollment now open at realagentperks.decisely.com.
You can also Google KW Perks.
Yep.
And it's one of the first links after the YouTube videos.
Yep.
But yeah, guys, this is gonna be an option for any agents who are needing health insurance, whether for yourself or for your families. And I've done a quote myself and it's pretty darn affordable. Like you don't have to feel like you have to get this high deductible health plan for a low premium. You can get some really reasonable health plans for pretty low price. So
Yeah. Awesome.
check it out.
Thank you.
They said it was going to average about 15%, didn't they? Lower than what you could get elsewhere.
I think so, yeah.
Have you compared
That's-
it to New York?
No, I haven't done an NAR one, but I've noticed I was like, oh, I could afford this. This is easy.
All right.
Good.
Next
If
slide.
Austin can afford it.
If I can afford it, guys.
Birthdays,
Hey.
birthdays, a big month. Some fun people in there.
Big one in there.
There is a big one in
Yeah,
there.
Chris Cataldo.
Yeah,
Happy birthday, Chris. Oh, and Tanya.
big 5-0.
Happy
For
birthday.
Marcella. Better make note of that.
Yep,
You know, November is the most fun.
that's what they say. So they say. All right. Academy Mortgage has some fantastic words for us. Come up here and make us wise, guys.
Take over, I'll move.
Come on over and make us wise.
I'll ask questions.
Okay, sounds good.
Here we go.
All right,
Make some room for y'all.
that's right. Cool.
All right.
He's got some slides I think he's going to share with us. So, yeah, I thought we'd do a couple quick things. Real quick, just a quick update on where rates are at. I think, as Dwight said, rates have continued to climb. We're for a conforming loan, you're in the 7s right now. And there's a couple of factors that are influencing this. The biggest factor right now is inflation. We're seeing increased inflation that is causing rates to go up. But there's something else that's unique that's happening right now, and rates feel higher than they should be, and they are. And part of the reason is because you have two things happening. One, you have inflation that's causing rates to go up, but you also have this fear of recession that's coming. And what that typically means for rates is that interest rates will start to come back down during a recession. So you have all of these servicers who don't want to pay what they normally would for the note rates, because they're fearful that the rates are just going to get refinanced and that will all run off their servicing. So in this slide shows it really well. Our normal difference between the 10-year treasury and the mortgage rate is about 2 points typically. So let's say if the treasury is at 3%, your rate would be at 5%. But today the treasury is at 4.05, something like that. And yet our rates are more like 7.5, right? 7.25, 7.5, depends a little bit on your credit score and things. And so it's because this fear that rates are gonna be refinanced. So you've got those two things that are causing, and it is causing rates to be a little bit higher than they would normally be. So one of the benefits, again, that's kind of explains why things are happening, but one of the programs that we have, and Dwight talked about seller financing last week, and I think I mentioned the fact that even if a seller can't provide financing, what they can do to help encourage buyers and make it more affordable is they can provide a seller credit, and we can bring their payment down with a seller credit and do what we call a 2-1 buy down. So if you go to the next slide, I'll let Josh explain this one. Here's an example. We wanted to give you sort of a live example of this, of what the payment savings would be, and the cost would be to the seller, but the savings would be for the buyer. And then we did a permanent buy down example too.
So we've got a few slides with different examples. This one's at a purchase price of $550,000, 2-1 buy down on a 5% down payment loan with a loan amount of $522,500. And so what you can see here is the fully indexed rate. So the par rate is 7.5% in this example. So you can see is no monthly difference on that. And with the 2-1 buy down, sort of what that really means is for the first 2 years, the borrower gets to make a lower payment. Now they still have to qualify at the 7.5%. So they don't get to qualify at the 5.5. And they still have to qualify at 7.5%. But if they're waiting in the wings, thinking, gosh, I want to wait until rates come down. Well, this may help encourage them to get in sooner, because as Brad mentioned, the servicing value of a lot of these loans is pretty low, and which is one of the reasons why you see the higher rates. But this can allow somebody to, perhaps encourage them to buy now, knowing that they will likely be one of those folks that'll refinance when rates come down later. So what you can see is at 7.5% under year 3, that's showing the principal and interest payment of $36.53 per month. Year 1 is at 5.5%, showing a monthly difference of $687. So for that monthly payment for your borrower, for your buyer, they're saving close to $700 a month on their payment for that full first year, and $351 a month for that full second year. So a total of $12,450 in annual savings. But the real impact and the way they're feeling emotionally and how they feel good about it is on that monthly payment every month when they get that bill in the mail. What you can see on the right, where it says percent purchase price at 2.264%, that's important because you have to keep that still underneath the loan program's interested party maximum contribution amount. So seller credit, depending on the program, is only allowable up to a certain amount, and it depends on the loan program. At a 5% non-conventional, sellers only allowed to contribute up to 3%. So as you can see, there's plenty of room for a 2-1 buy down in this program. Another reason why this is important, because think of your listings, think of your sellers. gosh, their home hasn't moved maybe in a couple weeks, and they're freaking out because they think, gosh, 2 weeks seems like a long time, right? Well, not right now, but they're thinking, okay, gosh, I could take a $20,000 drop in price, or we could take a $10,000 or $12,000 credit that they'll contribute towards the seller or the buyer, and instead they're going to net more, and the impact to the buyer is going to be a lot better. A $20,000 price decrease isn't going to do much for that borrower's and that buyer's payment each month, but a $700 or $687 a month payment drop is going to make a huge impact for them.
Can I interject here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The challenge that we have is we haven't had to worry about any of this for quite a few months now. In fact, years. As the economy slows down, sellers will be happy to do this because they may only have one showing in 2 months. They may have 4 showings in 2 months and no offers. And so keep in mind that our mindset is still hung up on multiple offers and selling over list price, when in reality, this is the market that we're in right now. And I can tell you, sometimes the buyers and sellers would say, if you'll pay 12,000 in points, we won't ask for a new roof, because the roof might not have any more than a 3-year, 4-year, 5-year roof life, right? And so oftentimes the trade-off for a seller to pay all these points is they don't get nickel-dimed on repairs, things that the buyer can do themselves. And so that's the mindset. You have to have the right mindset on this, because buyers will love to do this. I think we're here today. Like, I think I have a seller right now that would probably do this because they've had one showing in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And I know it's well priced based on the comps. I came in a little bit lower. I'm thinking, okay, gosh.
Yeah. So the real difference, so this, the 2-1 buy down is only for conforming loans. So the loan amount has to be 647,200 or lower. But again, jumbo, if it's a jumbo loan, you can do a permanent buy down, right? So you can still have those funds. You can see on the permanent buy down, you're still saving $264. And that's for the life of the loan. And that might help if someone's not qualifying maybe at the higher rates, right? So there's a benefit for permanent buy downs. You want to just switch to the next one. You can see some other examples. Here's one at 650. They're saving $812 a month. The next one at 700. This is with 10% down. They're saving $828. So you can see that monthly savings is pretty dramatic for people. And if you think you're going to be refinancing in the next 12 to 24 months, potentially with rates coming back down, and even if there isn't a recession, with inflation coming down, that will help bring rates down too. So one way or another, we believe that rates are going to be coming down, even if we don't go into a full recession. So it gives you that temporary relief.
There was a question in the chat.
Yeah.
Ryan Purdy asked, is it fair to assume that the house still has to be appraised at that purchase price cost before the seller credits work?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's that. Again, there are other ways to work through the loan to value. If you're putting 10% down, for example, and the home didn't appraise, we could have a low or a higher loan to value. So instead of it being 10% down, we can do some things with that too. So,
if I was working with a buyer right now,
Yeah.
I would know exactly what that buy down rate's going to cost me, the 2-1 buy down rate's going to cost me. And regardless of what happened on the home inspection, I would come back and probably try to get something close to that, or
Yeah.
try to get that amount for my clients, just to save them that money a month.
Yeah.
I mean, they've already qualified for the loan. Like, be a hero and save them $700 a month. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, the 2-1 buy down has to be seller paid. The buyer can't do it. The buyer can do.
Yeah. I just
pay
think it
for
like,
but it has to be
I'd make a
seller paid.
mountain of a molehill of an inspection,
no,
a repair
You
job.
bet.
One last thing, if you have a seller or a borrower and they're wanting to pencil this stuff, if you have a seller and they're thinking you need to drop the price, well, and you think, well, maybe they can net more, let us help you pencil this out. Give us a call. We're happy to help pencil this out for you so you can present back to your client.
Yeah, that's just a simple spreadsheet we use to
Yeah.
calculate it.
And the conversations that I used to have is that if I had a $700,000 listing, and if the market is predicted to be down, 5%, let's say 5%, then that's $35,000 on that listing over the year, right? Drop 5% of 700. So if I have a home on the market and I haven't had an offer for 3 or 4 months and the market is declining and an offer comes in where they want to pay 15,000, the choice is, do you let your price go down 15,000 in the next 2 or 3 months, or do you pay points and get your cash? That's the world that we're going to.
Mhm.
And so we have to start thinking in terms of trade-offs with owners. And I would do this math when I was listing homes. I would say, look, here's probably what's going to happen. Hopefully we won't be in this situation, but I want you to be thinking about what happens if we don't have an offer that's acceptable until 2 or 3 months down the road, and then they ask you to pay X points. Why would you do that? Well, here's why.
Yeah.
In a market going down, you're going to lose that equity whether you pay the points or not. So why not pay the points, get your cash, and be free to move on?
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. All right. Hey, so I want to welcome Erik Olson to the party. He is with the Lake Oswego Planning Department. He's going to talk to us today about the infill zoning changes in Lake Oswego, and it is pertinent to the rest of the state in some degree, in some fashion.
Yeah.
Camera. There, you got your face.
Hi, yeah, I'm not sure
Hi,
why my
Eric.
camera's not working. It works very regularly, so I don't know what's going on there, unfortunately. I can try to troubleshoot, but yeah, I think it might be something. Yeah, anyway, I'm not sure what's going on there, unfortunately.
Well,
But I can attempt to do it without the image of my face here. I do have slides to use, and I just want to check in. I'm not sure how much time you wanted me to go here, but I have a hard stop at 11. So
Okay.
if you think that's enough time, I can
Yeah,
just get going.
Let's do it.
All right. I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Great. All right, so I just wanted to give a quick overview, and I have a lot of slides, but I'll try to go over them as quickly as possible, just with an update about some of our work on middle housing that we've been working on for the last couple of years here at the city of Lake Oswego. So I'll start out with just a bit about the bill itself, some of the rules that were developed around it. Of course, I'm thinking of House Bill 2001, which established regulations related to middle housing throughout the state. So I'll talk a bit about that, talk about the process that we used here at the city council and some of the direction we got from council to move forward, and just the outreach that we conducted throughout the city. Then I'll go through the proposal, again, try to keep it short. These minutes are not accurate in terms of how much time I will spend, but really I want to make sure that we cover some of the additional opportunities we have coming up in the next year or two to get engaged with this work, which is really where we're at right now. So just as a background, we actually completed this work earlier this year back in May, and it was adopted officially. The findings were adopted in early June. So middle housing code amendments have been effective in Lake Oswego since June of this year, so for a few months now. So just a little bit about the bill itself. So I'm referring to House Bill 2001. This was passed back in 2019 by the Oregon legislature, and as I'm sure all of you are aware, it required cities, for the most part, any city over 10,000 in population, but also sort of more stringent requirements for those over 25,000 in population to permit middle housing basically in all areas where detached single-family homes are permitted. So this requires cities throughout the state rather them to update their zoning codes by June 30th of this year. So when they talk about middle housing, the state really defined that to be, at least conceptually, between sort of the detached single family home typology and mid-rise or multifamily apartment typologies. And specifically, they defined it to include duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, cottage clusters, which they refer to as bungalow courts on this diagram, as well as townhouses. So a little bit about what those are, just specifically for the definition. Duplexes include 2 units on 1 lot, so 2 different units, but just no lot division necessarily. Triplex would be the same, but with 3. Quadplex is also sort of the same concept, but with 4 units all on 1 lot. So there was a little bit of delineation between where we were required to allow these different housing types, but for the most part, the city opted to take a more generally applicable, sort of a broader brush approach, where for the most part, if you meet the minimum lot size, you are allowed to develop all of these housing types on your residential lot. Townhouses are, basically the same as a duplex, triplex, or quadplex, but they would have to be on their own lot, so that would require a lot division. And cottage clusters are also allowed generally in all areas where detached single-family residential use was previously exclusively allowed. So that conceptually is this idea of small detached units oriented around a common courtyard. So there's a bit of a different sort of orientation, less towards the street and more inwardly oriented towards that sort of common courtyard area. In terms of what the state was hoping to accomplish here, they were looking to provide more options for housing, so smaller units in more locations, again, really specifically targeted to detached single-family residential zones that existed previously. They wanted to increase the general overall supply of housing and provide more opportunities for development, as well as to integrate different types of housing in every neighborhood more effectively, sort of have a more of a mix of housing types in, again, areas that were previously detached single family. And of course, the state spent some time developing rules related to middle housing. So this was most of 2020. The state had been working on these and kind of unveiled those at the end of 2020. For the most part, as it was written, the bill itself, as well as our proposed code amendments, applied to all of the city's residential zones. So everywhere where single family was permitted previously and currently. One thing I would mention is that the state bill actually did not really preempt the ability for CC&Rs, so covenants, conditions, and restrictions, to prohibit middle housing. So it did set a sort of hard line at January 1st, 2020. So no new CC&Rs can be adopted that would preclude middle housing. But if there was a CC&R adopted, if an HOA or other entity decided to put a restriction on their property prior to that date, it would still be effective. So the bill did not sort of overturn those existing CC&Rs. It was kind of outside the scope of what they were able to do at the state. So that's an important point there. There's a lot of CC&Rs within the city that do restrict this. We don't always know exactly where they are or the sort of current status of those, because the city does not maintain those or really is not a party to those agreements. But there is always, of course, the potential for them to be modified by the parties that agreed to it, to, if it had prohibited middle housing, to change it to allow it. So there's the possibility, even in areas where there are existing CC&Rs that restrict this, for those parties to decide that they want to allow it. So the city had to kind of plan for that eventuality as well. The rules, for the most part, allowed the city a little bit more control over the design of middle housing and less about the location or density. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that specifically looks like in terms of our proposal in just a moment. So just a little bit about the process. We started this, we were really analyzing the rulemaking for the end of 2019 through most of 2020. Did a lot of research and analysis to develop some recommendations in sort of the spring of 2021. We got some public input on those sort of implementation options at that point. Moved forward through the end of last year, more community engagement, more sort of refinement of our draft code, Of course, I haven't updated the slides, so we're clearly a little bit further than that at this point into the fall of 2022, but it was adopted by the city council back in late spring, early summer of this year. One of the sort of components of that was we developed or we appointed, and council appointed a middle housing code advisory committee, as we referred to it. So that was a body, it was 15 members that met on a variety of different topics, really focusing on preservation of existing residential structures, scale and character of middle housing, runoff and stormwater impacts, and affordability and accessibility. We met about 6 or 7 times last year to discuss those recommendations and provide input in sort of guidance to the Planning Commission and City Council as they considered the proposed code amendments that were developed by staff. Just a little bit on the council direction, they did, there were some options, but they did, ultimately opt to permit middle housing fairly broadly. Again, there were some different options, but it applies to all the residential zones in the city. In terms of the minimum lot size, basically, we're meeting the minimum requirements from the state in terms of where middle housing is allowed. So if, generally speaking, if the minimum lot size would permit a single family detached unit, we would also allow middle housing to be constructed there, though there are some exceptions to that, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And yeah, again, that'll be a little bit later in the presentation, but for the most part, also we got direction from council to apply the sort of minimum requirements from the state related to parking as well to middle housing. So the state does cap the amount of parking that can be required for middle housing to 1 space per unit. There's no cap on the number of spaces, but we can only require 1 space per unit. And I will talk a little bit about we ended up adopting here, and I'll go through this quickly again, but feel free to take note if there's anything that you want me to dig into further in a question. In terms of our dimensional standards that apply to middle housing, for the most part, we are just applying the same standards, really the bulk and massing or dimensional and design standards. We would apply the same ones to middle housing that would be applicable to single family. So, we're not sort of proposing that it be more restrictive for middle housing or anything of that nature, and that would also not be compliant with the state law. So, this kind of is what that would look like. You have a sort of envelope where you can build a single family house, and you'd have to fit your quadplex or townhouse within that same envelope under the assumption that they would be obviously smaller units individually, but sort of fit within the same amount of floor area. Of course, lot coverage, setbacks, et cetera, would also apply, maximum height. So just a quick overview of what that generally looks like. So this is, what it would look like for a single family, or I'm sorry, for a duplex. It would be essentially the same as we would ask for a single family dwelling. So you can see, when it comes to floor area and lot coverage, the same regulations would apply more or less. One thing that I would point out that's a bit different is that we do require higher lot sizes for quadplexes and cottage clusters in some instances. And triplexes as well. So when it comes to triplexes, even if you're in like a R3 zone where the minimum lot size is 3,000 square feet, we would still ask for a 5,000 square foot minimum lot size in order to construct a triplex. And we found that that's kind of, it's hard to do that regardless on a smaller lot, at least while meeting the sort of applicable setbacks and dimensional standards. When it comes to quadplexes and cottage clusters, we ask that even if it's in an R5 or R6 zone, where theoretically the minimum lot size is 5,000 or 6,000 square feet, we would require a 7,000 square foot lot for quadplex or a cottage cluster. So that's sort of, when it comes to R10 or R15, it would still be, or even R75, basically all lots that meet minimum lot size would allow all of the different types of middle housing. We did, propose some restrictions on the number of driveways for these just to ensure, it's a bit more consistent with the existing fabric in Lake Oswego of the neighborhoods. We tailored a bit of our regulations to ensure that townhouses would have to have some separation between the driveways, so it couldn't just be all pavement in front of a townhouse, more or less. And we also fine-tuned our garage appearance and location standards because we had identified, if we're looking at something like a quadplex where they might need all of the floor area that's allotted to them, and a lot of that could actually, because of the parking requirements, 1 space per unit would mean you'd have to fit 4 spaces on that lot. So that could result in quite a large or bulky garage. So we took a more sort of fine-toothed comb look at the garage location and appearance standards in the code. We simplified them a bit and just made sure that they would apply and sort of mitigate the potential large bulky garages that could go along with middle housing. And this is another sort of piece of that. So, we really, depending on the width of the garage, we require more garage appearance mitigation type moves or standards to be met. So we would require a bit more setback for a wider garage, as well as more of the sort of garage appearance standards to be included. So those include things like individual garage doors, separate garage openings that are offset from one another, windows on the garage, decorative trellis, things of that nature that could mitigate the sort of visual impact of the large garage width. When it comes to cottage clusters, I would point out that they are subject to a different dimensional and design standard. So for the most part, we just adopted what we considered to, based on the state's guidance, considered to meet their minimum compliance requirement. So that was the DLCD model code, which essentially, allows for cottage clusters to be sited on a property with just 10-foot setbacks on all sides. So it's a bit different because you're orienting the open space more inward as opposed to in the front or rear or side of home. So that was part of the model code that we ended up adopting. But one thing that we did have the ability to customize it a bit. So we were able to specify that, we did, based on council guidance, want cottage clusters to be between 5 and 8 units that would share a common courtyard. Based on the state requirements, the footprint of those cottages can be no more than 900 square feet, but they can be 2 stories tall as well. So we do allow for that in the code with some limitations on square footage. You have to screen parking, and common courtyard has some minimum requirements in terms of landscaping and pathways. So we did have, again, the ability to customize this a bit. We set the minimum number of units for a cottage cluster at 5 and applied a different sort of maximum square footage for the cottage cluster units in different zones, 1,000 square feet in R75 and lower per cottage cluster unit, and 1,200 square feet in the R10 and R15 zones.
6 units.
So that's fairly small units, but again, these are 5 to 8 sort of fitting on one lot. So, I guess there was a desire from Planning Commission and City Council to ensure that the individual cottages themselves didn't become too bulky. In terms of our review procedures, this is sort of the crux of the middle housing bill, is really that we allow it through a ministerial process. So it no longer requires design review, a land use application to go, through the DRC or anything of that nature. You can get a middle housing permit approved through the same process that you would get a single family, just a normal building permit approved at this point. So that doesn't require pre-app, neighborhood meeting, public notice, public hearing, but it would include the same review that you could expect for a building permit. And one other thing that I would point out is that another bill that was passed by the legislature to sort of address middle housing related to the division of land. So we didn't implement this in our code, but we are sort of deferring to the state statute in order to implement that here in the city. And more or less what it requires is that the city expedite lot division applications that are sort of designed to provide ownership opportunities for middle housing. So it's not necessarily increasing density, because we would allow for up to, between 2 and 8 units of middle housing to be developed on a given lot. But if there was a desire to subdivide the land just for ownership opportunities, almost similar to like condominiumizing a lot or property, but there is an expedited process that the state has made available to essentially ensure that those are approved within a given time frame as long as they meet certain minimum requirements. So just one thing I would leave you with, I'll skip through a bit of this, but for the most part, I just want to mention that we're currently undertaking some work related to House Bill 2003. So there's a few different pieces of that. The first piece is housing needs analysis, and really that's work that we're beginning to embark on right now. So we'll have to update that before the end of next year, and we'll be looking more generally at the types of housing needs that the city has based on sort of what type of buildable land is within the city, the capacity that that land has to develop housing, as well as sort of a look at our demographic population and determining, based on what we see, what type of housing would, fit the needs of the population we know exists here, both workers and residents. So really, that process sets the stage for a much larger conversation about different strategies the city can take to address those housing needs that we do identify. And that's, all related again to this House Bill 2003 that was adopted concurrently with House Bill 2001. And again, that's kind of where a lot of our, at least the sort of workload of myself and the Planning Commission will be oriented in the next year or two. So just, there will be a lot of opportunities to get involved there. We've already put together a task force to lead that work and provide input to the commission and the city council as we undergo this process. But there's just a lot of activity. So I just wanted to mention that before I go. And I will cut it a bit short. As I said, I do have to get going, but I think I was able to cover the big points. Hopefully didn't go too fast, but I can stick around for a few minutes if there are any questions that I can help to answer here.
Hi, Eric, this is Dwight Schwab. Can you tell me when the city of Lake Oswego will start accepting permits for these types of housing units?
So as I mentioned, we adopted this already. So this has been, you can submit a permit now. You've been able to do that since July. It's been effective.
Okay. I also had another question. If you had a fourplex and everything was attached and you didn't want to create separate lots and go through the land use process, then the only way you could have separate ownership, which was one of the criteria, would be to create a condo for that fourplex. Is that what the city's thinking?
Well, that's one way. I would again mention that expedited lot division process. It is a land use process, but is expedited, and there is sort of a limited ability for those to be disapproved. They are fairly, they're not ministerial per se, but they do have a more sort of streamlined process through the statute adopted by the state. So that was really designed to be a much more straightforward way to divide lots, again, not in a way that creates additional density. You're not looking at a lot that's over the minimum lot size and creating two different lots that are compliant with the minimum lot size. You're looking at, you have a lot that meets minimum lot size, you want to put middle housing on it and just sell it off. So it is a much more streamlined process. So I'd encourage you to look into Senate Bill 458 and some of the options that it allows for folks.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So since permits have been, the window to apply for a permit has been open since April 1, how many permits have you had submitted, permit requests?
We haven't had any. We've had some sort of general inquiries when it comes to middle housing, but a lot of those are a little bit more complicated than a typical just, we want to build a quadplex or something. They would involve, density creating subdivisions or zone changes or a lot of different sort of elements that
Do you have a
make it a little bit more complicated.
Do you have a sense from any of the local builders if they're interested in building middle housing?
Yeah, we've heard in particular cottage clusters seems to be something that folks are interested in, and you could see, if you're looking at a 7,000 square foot lot, it might be really hard to sort of squeeze everything on and make it comfortable and desirable. But if you do have a larger lot in an R15 zone or something like that, it definitely lends itself a bit more to that type of form.
But so far, no one has actually applied to build it.
That's right. Yeah, no, we've
Okay.
just had like inquiries. We've had some informal meetings and that's about it.
Okay, thanks.
Awesome. Any other questions?
I have one more.
Yep.
I thought I read in the city newspaper that there was a motion, or maybe it's been approved now, where they could require the same sorts of development restrictions that they would on a typical developer that was maybe creating doing a minor partition or even a plat. And I kind of interpreted that as being, possibly putting in a larger sewer line, possibly doing something with stormwater that they might not expect to do because there's just a silly little single family lot and they're going to add a couple more houses to it. So what's happening in that front?
Yeah, our proposal was to essentially, because we are now allowing these housing types to be constructed through that ministerial process, we no longer had the ability to ask for, the type of sewer extensions or upsizing or sidewalk be constructed if it doesn't exist, or curb and gutter or pavement. So there's sort of the street improvement piece and the utilities piece. So we had, sort of brought that to Planning Commission, and they were in favor of, basically our proposal was to apply our existing policy, which is to require the level that would be necessary to bring it up to the level of standards identified in the transportation systems plan, stormwater plan, whatever applicable infrastructure plan we could be talking to. We would require, based on the context, conditions, of course, if there, wasn't a sidewalk potentially, and there was a new quadplex coming in and there's sidewalks on, the adjacent properties, under our proposal, that would have required the developer to provide that sidewalk. So we did hear some concern from the council about that potentially being a disincentive to the development of middle housing. So, we have basically put that on hold. The idea will still be to allow for clear and objective standards, so mitigation standards that are clear and objective to be applied, but they would not, be applied to middle housing in that case. So, it's a bit of a veering away from our previous policy, which was to ensure that the city received sort of the level of service when it comes to infrastructure or transportation or street systems and design that we would expect through the planning that we've done. We did have that ability to require that through a conditions of approval for something like a subdivision in the past. And again, the idea would be to continue to apply that to 3 or 4 unit developments or more, cottage clusters as well. But again, that's on hold right now. So it's unclear where that's going, but it could look like a change in policy for the city. The city, if they do want to take a little bit more of an active stance on encouraging middle housing, that is one avenue that we could go. Of course, with House Bill 2003, there are a lot of different approaches. There's nearly like 100 different approaches that we could take to incentivize middle housing. And there are other things that we've noted could make a much bigger impact in terms of cost than this mitigation question. But yeah, I guess we're having that conversation a little bit prior to the House Bill 2003 work.
Thank you. I think that's it.
Good.
Erik, we might have you back again in a few more months, maybe in June.
All right, well, let's just make sure we have enough time for the presentation.
Yes.
I do have to get going.
Okay.
I'm sure there's a lot more questions, but yeah, I'll work with Austin to schedule that.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Bye.